Hi Dave, thanks very much for sending the video over. I've just had a little look. Overall, you've got a very, very nice golf swing. A lot of positives there. One being you're really on plane, so your club is lovely on plane, so you don't lose the plane line at all. Backswing looks pretty nice. You get a little bit restricted on the backswing, so I'll show you what I mean by that. And on the way down, the club's lovely on plane, but I know what you mean about, you were saying that you lose some pressure into the ball, you lose some distance, and then you lose strike as well, of fatting the ball quite often, you were saying. So this is what I see. You're going to see the yellow line and how much your bottom, how much your weight goes away from that line there. That's doing two things. That's restricting the amount of turn you can get. And that's why I asked you potentially what restrictions you have, and you said you haven't really got any. And you lose a little bit of spine angle, and then from there you can see you're away and you stand up a little bit, and obviously you get the club on plane. Halfway down you can be able to see the club in a lovely position, but because you've kind of got to the top of the backswing and your weight's kind of gone a little bit more out towards your toes, or they've come away from that starting line, on the way down your right elbow gets too stuck behind you. And you can see, I'll do a split screen of, I'm not saying you can be a professional, but myself, you can see my right arm's more out in front of me, which is allowing natural lag, and then I can create the compression into the ball. If your right elbow gets stuck behind your body, which I'll put a circle where your right elbow is, from there, so you can see halfway down, or when the club's parallel to the ground, you look like you create quite a nice position, but from there you can't stop it. You can't stop the centrifugal force, the club catching up, and it's this kind of scooping action. And then because of this, like your elbow stuck behind your hip, you open up a little bit too much and you kind of lose that compression and strike. So from here, I'd really like you to feel like your pocket. Now, I don't want your leg to straighten on the way back, but you definitely need to feel like your right pocket is touching something behind you. So imagine if you've got like a wall behind your bottom, about 6 inches, if you can feel like you're sitting and pushing your right bum back and your right pocket. It's basically what's called, Dave, hip depth. So if you can get some hip depth into your backswing, that's going to really have a good influence about how you can now swing your arms out in front of you on the downswing. And if you're in a position more like this, instead of this, and then this, the club behind you and your arm behind you, if you're in a position here, so you're kind of twisted a little bit more. Now, one word of warning, if you find that difficult, you can lift this left heel up in the air a little bit to allow this to move. So remember, we're not swaying or anything like that, we're allowing this right pocket to go back behind you a little bit more. Remember, we're not locking the knee, so there's pressure, so little boundaries. Remember, you can move this if you want, but remember the boundaries are you never want weight to be on the outside of your right shoe here. So if that's happening, if you've got weight on the outside of the shoe, your pocket's gone back and out too much, which is pushing weight, as you can see on the outside. So make sure your pocket goes back behind you, pushes way back. Obviously that's exaggerated. And then you'll be able to see you're in this position now where your hip is out the way, and now you're able to drop this club out in front of you and your arms out in front of you. Much easier now to try and create that natural power and snap down at the bottom, because if this is back behind you, you can't stop it. You can't stop the club from flicking. It's impossible. As soon as you get here and you lay a 70 miles an hour or whatever club head speed you have with any club, Dave, really, this club will fly out in front of you and you're going to lose all power and compression. And it's really going to be restrictive. So getting some hip depth into your swing, Dave, is going to be a massive, massive ingredient to be able to help everything else beyond that. Because remember, if you flick the right domino in the right order, everything else hopefully will follow. So, if you're not sure, you can always drag your right foot back and you could always hit some balls. Now, to help with things, I wouldn't have too wide a stance. You haven't got on too wide a stance, but don't try and get too wide a stance because that's going to be restrictive to the amount of movement you have. So I would stay as stance you are, but just be careful, you don't want to have them too wide. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow automatically this gap for this club to fall into in your arms. Really push that back as much as you can. Keep some revs off it and allow everything to move. Remember, your arms and hands and club are used to being stuck behind your body, so give them a few shots. So hit a dozen balls, Dave, and just pull that right hip back as much as you can. Really feel like you're sitting onto that hip. And my weight now is off my toes. And then from here, you're kind of delaying everything, allowing your arms and club to sit in front of you. Really keeping that delay. Little exercises you can do to be able to keep compression into the ball. So I would say, make sure your backswing's right. And then you're going to kind of keep everything back as long as you can. You're not going to fire this too quickly, okay? So I would say, do that as a first initial. Make sure your leg's not locked, but you can straighten a little bit. But from here, remember, you're just holding this back leg back a little bit to allow your arms to fall out in front of you a little bit more. Because remember, what I see is your arms stalling and the club just flicking from there. So you're looking for your arms to be a bit more dominant on the way down. And then from there, you can let it go. But it's that split second of allowing these arms to get out in front of you, which you can't feel at full speed. Keep this back. Keep this shut, so you can see. And then that's going to then pacify your top half. So your arm swing is naturally going to be a bit quicker without that club casting. And then from there you can see your impact position is going to be much more like this instead of open and holding on. So, but you've got a good swing, Dave, but I would just layer that, especially if you're just hitting a ball and it's a flash and you can't feel it, because obviously you can't feel it. None of us can feel it down here. But you need to find that thing that is going to influence that arm swing to be a bit more efficient. And that hip depth is definitely one. Remember, hip depth, and then there's hip depth coming down, because you're not firing away from it, you're not going towards the ball, you're keeping back. Because remember, you're trying to keep this bottom against the wall, and then your left cheek is the same as well. And what that's going to do, that's going to influence your spine angle, and that's going to influence your arms to be a bit more efficient as well. And remember, you don't want to ever come away from that line, and that's what you do. Keep back away from it as much as you can. That's not your head being away from it, that's your bum. Your backside, keep back away from it, and you can see how much I'm over the ball. As much as you can, Dave. Practice swings to start with. Remember, you're going to use different muscles, so be very aware and very slow to start with. Don't be bashing 500 balls first day. Remember, Dave, just having a foundation under you is really important. And if you move that, you can see your arms now can't swing more effectively, and the club then has to flick. So you're going to lose a lot of compression and speed and distance. So keeping that spine angle, but remember, hip depth and good leg action allows that spine angle. So you're keeping this these pockets back as much as you can and not forward. Yeah, so keep in touch, Dave. Keep sending the swings over. Any questions? I'll be glad to help you out. All the best. Thanks, Dave. Cheerio.